Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the organizers for allowing me this opportunity to talk about a bit of a different topic, which is more on the diversification of our data science training and development programs. And by diversity for this talk, I'm going to be talking about gender inclusivity in data science training. For the purposes of this talk, I'm going to be referring to a report that is publicly available on the SARAO website, which is the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory, where I'm from, and I'm under the Human Capital Development Program. And this is the report that we published in March of last year. And it uses, I think we've heard a lot about this DARA Big Data project. So DARA is the Development in Africa with Radio Astronomy Big Data project. So it used this particular project as a case study to look at, are we including women within these types of initiatives? How far have we come to including women? And what can we do going forward to include women in these types of projects? The report acknowledges or makes reference to the Global Gender Gap Report, and I'm not sure if many of you are aware of these reports. And specifically for this particular report, there seems to have been a significant reduction in the educational attainment gap on average. And this is due to more women and girls having access to education, as well as them being able to complete primary, secondary, and tertiary education. We see that everywhere. We see that in Africa as well. But regardless of them having these opportunities in education, the skills that women have, or the skills that they are interested, do not line up with what is required for the professions of the future. Now, the professions of the future, according to the Global Gender Gap reports, would be sectors such as data and AI, engineering, cloud computing. These are just some of the sectors that are showing the most on-demand in terms of job sectors. So regardless of women having access to education, they're not having the right skills to access these kinds of jobs. So the 2020 Global Gender Gap Report highlights that 26% of professionals employed in data and AI were women, and the successive reports have reported similar type of statistics. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in changing the face or what is causing these persistent gender gaps that we do see. Just a little bit of background about what this DARA Big Data program. So it is funded by the UK South Africa Newton Fund. The funding just came to an end in March this year. We had the first initiative, which was a Big Data Africa School that took place in 2017. And it represents a human capacity development program looking to increase Africa's research and its skills base in data-driven science and associated technologies. So it builds on the skills that we need for the SKA project. And as I said before, it's started in 2017, and it just ended in March with another school that we just ran. These are the DARA Big Data partners, or I would say the main partners in running DARA Big Data. It's led by the University of Manchester. On the South African side, we have SARAO, IDEA, as well as the OAD, who have been running various initiatives, and I think we've been collaborative on many of these types of initiatives. The UK institutions have hosted master's and PhD students. So the case study is divided into two components. The first component was a demographic analysis, so trying to understand what is causing the gender gap. Can we quantify the gender gap in these programs? Whereas the second component was a Women in Data Science survey, and we tried to look at what factors these women were experiencing, whether it was at universities, in the workplace, that is causing this kind of gender gap. We also tried to ask them various different questions about their experiences in a STEM environment. And the whole point to this report was to provide specific recommendations that will increase women's participation in current and future training initiatives, also promote their inclusion in developing data science and AI skills in Africa. This is how I like to divide the different initiatives in DARA Big Data, which is introductory level and intermediate and advanced level. I know that Islam spoke more about the data science hackathons, so I won't be covering that, but those are your shorter type events. From SARAO, we've been more involved with the Big Data Africa School, which is a longer type event. Both the Big Data Africa School and the Data Science Hackathons look at introducing fundamentals of data science and machine learning to students, introducing them to the various tools and techniques to work efficiently on large data sets. I should say that the projects that students complete as part of the school, and Islam mentioned this as well, it's not astronomy focused. For the Big Data Africa School, we would offer various thematic areas within the school, or we would place focus on the school being one thematic area. So I think that's what makes it a bit different in terms of training, is that we're not focusing just on astronomy training over here. We do place a lot of focus on the skills for industry, which is what we heard of in the previous talk. And with the Big Data Africa School, what also makes a difference is we minimize the lectures within the school. So it's more about students working on these projects for the duration of the school, and then looking at how we can expose them more to the soft skills or the professional competencies that they would need for the workplace, so making them employable. At intermediate and advanced level, we have an Africa Data Science intensive program, which we ran with AIMS. This is a data science training course, which is usually run over the course of about 4 months. And with this particular course, we find that it's not the youngest students or participants. We find older participants, those who are working, and they want to be trained in data science, and they want that step in the right direction. So that's what this particular course can offer them. We've also offered a number of scholarships, mostly from the UK side, and these were offered to African students from the 8 SKA African partner countries to undertake a master's or PhD in the UK. We've offered a limited number of scholarships in South Africa. This just gives you an idea of what the initiatives were that were included in this report. And it's not updated for the events that we've run over 2021 up until this year, but these are the initiatives forming part of the report. So what have we been finding? And this slide just gives a summary of what were the findings from the demographic study. And I think when I mention these findings, you will also see that it's very similar to any type of science initiative. So it's not just something that is limited to data science. So firstly, we know that there are low application numbers from females that are applying towards our training and development initiatives. And this we could quantify as being most of the time 30% or less of the applications. So we see that across all the different training initiatives. So it doesn't matter if it's the introductory level or the advanced level training. We have seen a small increase in the number of females applying to these initiatives since 2017 to 2020. And I think we just regarding that as part of having a more inclusive selection process. We try to have 50-50 gender balance. That doesn't always work, but we do hope that we are making progress in including more women in these programs. The third point is very interesting. Female candidates were more likely to persevere through the pre-assessment phase, which is for some of our programs, we have an assessment phase, that is for the Big Data Africa School and the Data Science Intensive Program. And this is in contrast to men. The men we found were not as, they would persevere, but not to the level as to what the females would do. So this is one thing that we wanted to point out in this particular report. We also found a higher number of applications from females from the more populous SKA Africa partner countries, and these would be Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and we had to decline a number of women applications just because we couldn't include all of them, and we try to be inclusive of all countries. So in this case, we do recommend how different training programs can address that by looking at in-country or regional specific initiatives. The second component of the study was a Women in Data Science survey. And we carried out 2 surveys. The first survey was directed to female participants in training and development initiatives. And we asked them questions around these 5 stages of the training process, whether it is about the application process, the awareness of the application or training program. We asked them questions around pre-training. Did we give them sufficient support by providing background material, those sorts of things? To the training event, do we provide sufficient mentors throughout the training event? Mm-hmm. And then the other successive questions were around support after the event. The second survey was directed towards those females who applied for a training event or a scholarship but were not very successful. And for them, we focused on the application phase as well as just some general questions around the experiences in a STEM environment. So this is just a graphical representation of where these ladies came from. At the time, most were South African or from Kenya, and that's where most of our applications came from. But we had a number of representation from most of the SKA Africa partner countries, which is the countries we were trying to include through this initiative. For the first survey, which is the DARA Big Data training and development initiatives with those who participated in these events, these just show some of the characteristics. I know it's very small on the screen, but I just want to highlight that these were ladies between 20 to 30 years old. Most of them had a 4-year bachelor's degree, science or engineering, when undertaking this training. Some of them had a master's degree, and most were studying full-time at the time, or they were full-time employed. This is the results around those questions that I just showed a couple of slides, which is around those different stages. And I'm just going to highlight what was interesting around that. Around the application phase, we found that over 60% of these females were not confident about their submissions or what they submitted to us through the application phase, and I think that's a large amount. And again, this is in contrast to what we found to the men. Even though the men would submit a bad application, they still thought that they submitted a very good application. So there are clearly very different ways of thinking over here. For those females who participated, participants that were unsuccessful in their application, they did not receive any support from a lecturer, from a peer, and that will become important in the next couple of slides, so that level of support that females do receive. On the pre-training, this is just before they arrive, and again, almost 60% of the female participants felt unprepared when they arrived for a training event. And this is regardless of them given background material. So we haven't assessed whether these females or the males have been using the background material. Many of them don't. They come to an event and they expect that, everything is going to be learned at the training event. So this is something that we're looking at how we can address. Those females that did use the background material, they felt more prepared, they felt more confident at the event on their technical abilities throughout the event. So we definitely need to look at how we can get them to prepare better for attending these events. At the actual training event, things like mentorship for women was echoed throughout this survey, and also peer-to-peer mentorship. Can they be matched with a buddy at a training initiative, female-led groups or teams, and this is specific for hackathons. Can we have more events that target females? And many of the responses also emphasize the critical role of the soft skills, professional competencies that would prepare them for the workplace, and they would like to see more of that in the event. So it's not just about the technical aspects of what you're training, but it's also those soft skills, and are you preparing these individuals for the workplace? That is critical as well. And then just after the training event, many of these females said, 82% said, that they have recommended a particular training event or scholarship opportunity to a peer, and they would like to see more women in data science, women in tech type of events, And this is something also that we are looking into as to can we run and support these sorts of events. And many of these ladies that have been part of events would want to be mentors in the next set of training events. These are the findings from, or some of the findings. The report is quite extensive, so I think that if you want to see the full results from the report, I would suggest you go to that link. But the findings from the Women in STEM survey, I think, can be summarized firstly by looking at the main factors that influence females to participate or pursue a STEM career. And here we could extract two main factors that we saw as to why they were taking up these careers. Is firstly a belief in their personal capability to undertake STEM-related subjects, whether at school or university level. So they had this belief in themselves, they can do it. And you can see on the left that many of them thought that, just over half. We would like to see more of them being able to just have this belief in themselves. And then the second component is encouragement received from a role model, such as a teacher, a lecturer, family member, or friend. Some factors that inhibit women from applying for these events: self-doubt, gender stereotypes, and I think that's through this talk, you've seen it through when I spoke about the application phase. I found that a lot of women, they won't even apply for a particular training initiative or a scholarship if they don't think that they can do it. So, which is again very different to what the male counterpart would do. Gender stereotypes, specifically in Africa, we still see this gender stereotypes, and this could be due to their culture that they are coming from. So this also plays a big part into what is keeping them back. Mentorship, many of them believe that there's not enough mentors for them, whether it's at the event or mentorships after the event. They would like to see more mentors throughout their career. Financial support and availability of training resources. Many of these females attributed their success in STEM due to having financial support and the resources to be able to access educational resources. So we have to think of how do we keep on supporting these ladies. And then teacher and family support, which we don't really think of. I don't even think we talk about this in the workplace. This plays quite a critical role for women, is that support that you have in the background. And then I'm just quickly going to go through what the final recommendations were from the report. And there were 6 recommendations made. And we're hoping to address some of the issues that we have been faced with these programs through the interventions that you can see on the right-hand side. So firstly, increasing the application numbers from females. We need to look at how we can address that, whether it is extending our networks on the continent, specifically in Africa, and regionally and at country level. I know with DARA Big Data, we now have quite a big network, but it's still not big enough to get more applications from females. We also could accept recommendations, nominations from females or lecturers who recommend certain females. Setting targets for male and female participation. I know not everyone likes that, but we try to allow for equal participation in our events. So that is something that we always strive to do. Then we also recommended providing female mentorship or role models through our training events, and this is what we have been doing with all our Big Data Africa schools. So this has been working very well, showcasing women professionals in the field, peer-to-peer mentoring, as well as building women-led and majority female teams during the training initiatives. And I know this has worked well with some of the hackathons. Establishment of a Women in Data Science network. And as I said, we have an active alumni network now for DARA Big Data, with some of the women that we have trained through this program. They are coming back to help us with the training as trainers, facilitators, mentors, and they are training a new generation. So there's the sustainability model that you have. The establishment and promotion of women in data science and AI events. And this could be things like running all-female hackathons, women in tech events, women in data science events, as well as hosting in-country or region-specific initiatives that can be run in languages that are not necessarily in English. So some of these ladies are not feeling very confident just because of the language barrier that exists in Africa. And sensitizing events to cover topics that are of particular interest to women. This one I get asked a lot by women as to why can't we do certain hackathons on a topic that is of interest to them or importance to them. So I think we need to take those things into account. Targeted opportunities, which is, I think, scholarships, providing scholarships. Are we training in the right areas? This will always be something that we would need, so I'm not going to go into that. And then this is also something that got brought up, which is embedding a basic computer programming skills into primary and secondary school level goals. And again, goes back to the schooling. And in Africa, we know that these girls don't always have access to computers. It's still an issue. And the women from the survey, they brought this up quite often, saying that if we can address this somehow, this will help a lot in terms of giving access to opportunities to women. And then just very quickly, we did this report in 2021, or we published it. We have been following up with some of these initiatives. So last year, and this was with Carolina, we did have an Africa Women in Data Science event run under DARA Big Data. And we allowed the dates to coincide with International Women's Day. And this was a 3-day event where the first day we had a series of talks. There was a panel of African women who are working in the tech industry telling their stories, as well as a young data scientist who asked all the right questions, and she resonated very well with the young audience. And we opened up this event to the whole of Africa, and that it was hosted as an online event, but it did very well. We just completed the 4th Big Data Africa School, and we again opened this up to the whole of Africa. And as you can see on the left side, we have a 55% application from females, which we haven't seen before. We have never seen more females applying for these types of initiatives compared to men. So that is the first time that we've seen that, which has led us to running the first Big Data Africa School with a majority female participation, which was over 70%. So we are seeing some of the results of what we were doing. And this is, again, we celebrated International Women's Day this year with the women, and we celebrated the findings from the report. So, yeah, those were just some of the follow-up from the report that we've written. Thank you. I'm just leaving the link on the talk. Thank you.